Shown by the Aboriginal people. If I rub my finger on there like that, I can actually feel that's quite smooth, where it hasn't been chipped away. G'day, I'm Steve McGrath. For the last 20 years I've been hooking around the bush. 10 of those as an outback tour guide. On this particular part of the journey, I'm heading up into the Murchison district. Now we'll be having a look at some of the bush tuckers up there, and I'll be telling you a few yarns as we go along. Let's get on one of those bush tracks now. I put a stub in there, about that size, like that, and then I just bring it right up into a big sloppy mess. So the whole water will go woofa! It was mainly for treating sunburn, because Aboriginal people do get sunburn. This is Burnie Binmar Station, and it belongs to a real good mate of mine, Don. Now, Don's been up here for years and years. In the early days, he used to run sheep on here and make a bit of a living doing that. Today, it's gone past that pastoral, and it's for conservation purposes. But Don's the caretaker out here now, and it's always good to see an old mate. Young Don, how are you?
Good, and you?
Good. Not a bad drive out here. Geez, the country's looking good. You had a bit of rain out here.
Yeah, we had nearly a whole season's rain for the first 2 months this year.
Boy, geez, it's green.
It's drying off a bit now. We just would like some more very shortly.
Lakes are full.
Yeah, plenty of water holes around.
Excellent. Those carvings still pretty good?
Yeah, they're deteriorating a bit.
They relate to the ones out at Walga Rock too, don't they? They believe that because it's the same old ship, the same ship that's painted onto the Walga Rock, where these ones are carved into it, aren't they?
I think these are a lot older.
Is that right?
Yeah.
But they keep on questioning the ones at Walga Rock because they're painted on there, whether they're actually done by black fellas or white fellas.
It's just hard to know.
Of course it is. This truly is spectacular country out here, and these bush tracks that take me out into these Aboriginal art sites that only the locals really know exist. It's just great fun and it's a great enjoyment, and at the end of the trip it's always good to see paintings and rock carvings that aren't on that tourist trail. Well, this is worth the effort, Don. Bit of everything.
Yep.
Look, they've got handprints up the top there. Look, there's even an old boat.
Yeah.
Bird tracks.
Yeah.
Have a look at that, all those Yamaji fellas, all the
marks.
ceremony going on there. Look at that. To me, that looks like the old Bungara.
Yeah.
That sort of gets about the place. And the people around here, like that there looks like a goanna with the tail and his legs, the old Bungara. And this here with the large head and the smaller arms and the longer body would have to be one of the old Yamaji people in the ceremony.
In the human form,
as if they've been out hunting. Magnificent.
Right, have a look at this, Steve. I reckon this is fairly unique. When it was a little bit clearer years ago when we first came here, that was the deck, and it had sort of two masts with some riggings up around it. And then actually those two portions there actually looked originally like a couple of human beings. It was a round-fronted boat with the waves coming across, with the etchings actually in the rocks and not the painting, and here was the anchor at the front. I think it was rather unique, considering that we are 300 miles from the ocean.
I guess you've got to ask that question just on how they did this, because if you have a look at this piece here, this has actually been sort of chipped away with a bit of quartz. This whole rocky outcrop is quite soft. It's quite powderous. It's a little bit chalky. What the artist would do was sometimes shape the quartz that they were going to use to make the chips, and then just chip at this rock, continuously chip at it to break it away to make this pattern. I think that's just so talented, and so much patience went into it. The way they'd go to put their story onto that particular part of the rock. That's actually dealing with part of their important men's business, this whole totem here. I've seen it around a fair bit up around the back of Meekatharra, which is where we're heading a bit later on. But this one up here, this is a bird's track, probably an emu or something like that, because they're fairly common around here. And that's more inclined to be rubbing it up and down like that, just rub it up and down. Because if I rub my finger on there like that, I can actually feel that's quite smooth, where it hasn't been chipped away. The patience and the time that these people had to do all that, it astounds me, because it would just take up so much time, be chipping, and the rock wouldn't last too long, because after a while it would just crumble away. It's just an area that Aboriginal people would be so happy in. Plenty of shelter, plenty of sun, bush tuckers about the place. It's dry, there's water up the back up here as well. It would just be a great place for Aboriginal people to make a bit of a camp for a while. Unbelievable. And I still get excited when I see this art, and I've seen it all over Australia. I've seen the hands and the etchings and the paintings. I like this area because it's nice and remote. There's not too many people around. There aren't tourist buses. It's an excellent place. And let's just hope it stays like that. I've seen paintings all over this country, in the desert country, Cape York Peninsula and down south, and you can never become blasé on what you're seeing. 20, 30,000 years old paintings. One of the daily jobs about setting up camp is getting your timber. No good going looking through the dark with a torch for a bit of firewood. Get it early, get it near your fire, set yourself up. You know, you'd think after a hard day's work, you'd be able to sit back and relax and enjoy the camp, enjoy the tremendous night. But that's not always the case, because you've got to start preparing for the next day or so. You see, I've run out of bread. But that probably gives me a good chance to show off to you how I make damper. Let me show you. First of all, I use a self-raising flour. We get into that, break him off there like that, spill everything, and chuck him into the pot. Now you can sift it, you can measure it, do whatever you want to do with it, I don't care. But I usually chuck about half the packet in as such. Chuck him in, put him away. Now then, I get myself a bit of baking powder and throw him in as well. I know you're probably saying you don't need a bit of self-raising flour. Well, I think you do, because then you know for sure it's going to rise up. Chuck him in there like that. Be fairly generous with it. Now, just for good sake, a little bit of salt, pinch of salt. Chuck him in there as well. Then give him a real good stir up. Chuck him in there like that. Now what I do then is make a little bit of a hole right in the middle of it. Now I get beer, whatever choice, but make sure it's a full strength beer. Plenty of yeast in it and plenty of all those other little ingredients. Just get the top off and then pour him in the middle. Now also they'll tell you, put a little bit of liquid in there and mix it up. A little bit more, mix it up. What a waste of time. Just put plenty of liquid. I put a stubby in there, about that size, like that, and then I just bring it right up into a big sloppy mess. Just mix him all up like that. Now give it a damn good mix. Damn good mix like that. What I call a damn good thrashing. And that way it'll mix up really, really well. Now bring it back up to the dough that you need. Put a little bit more flour in there. Just like that, and then mix it up a little bit more. Look at that. See how that's going into a dough now? Now how difficult is that? There's no drama in that at all. There's no difficulty into making bread. We'll chuck a little bit more flour in there again. We get into the stage now where we're going to chuck the spoon away and get our hands in there. Now, how easy is that? Now get your fingers and get your hands into it. Grab a handful of flour, so that's not going to stick to you. And then get your hands in there. Now another little secret is to knead it right up. Mix it right up in that kneading process. I usually grab it and tuck it to bed, what I call tuck it to bed. So your fingers underneath, tucking it up into bed and just turning around all the time. Now you can keep on doing that for a while until you're happy with it. Look at that. Turn around. Now that's ready to go into your camp oven. Easy. Not a bad idea to have a good fire when you get into your campsite so you can get plenty of coals for your cooking. Now flatten him out like that, pretty simple. Now with different woods about the country, different heat. This acacia that we're burning will generate a lot of heat earlier on, but in about 10 minutes it'll sort of die down a fair bit, so keep your coals to a bit later on. Now I don't want a whole pile of heat straight away, so what I do is just put a little bit of sand on the top, otherwise you'll burn your damper on the bottom and the rest of it won't cook. Now I always heat the camp oven up. If you're at home in the kitchen, no good putting your bread straight into a cold oven. Same out in the bush. Doesn't take long. This is an old baduri. They're a spun iron. Then you just transfer that across into there. Make sure it's nice and flat, like that. Beautiful. Now, we don't want to burn that on the bottom. We'll chuck a little bit of flour, like that. Nice and warm in there. You don't want it too hot, otherwise you'll frighten your damper and you want to jump back out again. So you grab him like that. Beautiful. Bit of flour just on the bottom. Look at that. And chuck him in there. Give it a last couple of nice pats on the top. Grab me lid. Right on top. A few coals on the top. Now you don't want too many, otherwise you're going to burn that top. So just put a few on the top like that, and a few around the outside. Just run him around. Now I've got a little bit of wind coming over from the east this way, so I don't want too many coals on that side, otherwise that'll burn. There. Now just leave that for a while, about 15-20 minutes, and give it a bit of a check. Just leave him burn. Righto. Let's check him. Let's have a look. Got that lid. See how handy those gloves are? Now one thing that you always should have is a place where you can put your camp oven lid. Put him on the sticks, bricks, whatever, but keep it off that ground. Good little tip. Now look at that. Now isn't that something? I've fluked another one. Beautiful. That'll go really nice tomorrow with a nice cup of tea and a bit of jam on top. To me, this is the best part of the day, the early morning, getting up and getting out and doing things and finding new adventures and meeting new people and exploring. But it's always a little bit tough to get out of bed in the morning, especially after a hard night. There's a lot of things to do in outback Australia, but sleeping in the morning is not one of them. Once that sun comes up, you've got to get up. I always like to potter around the camp in the morning, just to have a bit of a tidy up before I go for my morning walk. I love to do this because I get the feel of the country, and if I'm going to do some painting for that day, I get a feel of the colours that are in the country and the surroundings, and just to breathe in that fresh air. Around here, there's always a chance to fill up the water bag. Always look for an area where the water is running. It might look stagnant a bit upstream, but where that water is running is always a good chance of nice fresh water. Now if you really want to double your chances of having nice clean water, take it home and boil it up in the billy for the days to follow. During the wet times, when the rains come down, this whole river system would be flowing with thousands and thousands of gallons of water. You simply couldn't walk through this river system like I'm doing today. There's even a good chance of finding some bush tuckers around here, if you know what you're looking for. There you go. We'll just take a couple of those off. That's one of the she oak, or a tamara. Well, they're all part of that casuarina family. It's a good tree to know because it indicates a lot of water under the ground. In fact, there's a fair bit of water around here, so we don't need to sort of dig up, because that's what you would do, dig a bit of a hole and get the water from under the ground. But these little nuts here, Aboriginal people had a use for those. When it was a pretty warm sort of a day, they would chew them, chuck them in their mouth and chew them all up, because what that would do would stimulate your saliva glands to produce that saliva into your mouth. They'd get the saliva glands producing all that saliva to help you survive, because it would keep the moisture in your mouth rather than your mouth drying up, and your tongue swelling up and all sorts of stuff. It certainly helps. To me, breaking camp is as important as making camp. It's a chance to go through your equipment, a chance to tidy up your car, make sure you put all your stuff away properly, you know where it is, and everything's safe and everything is secure. But to get away, to get on that road again and to find a further adventure is something that is just undescribable. It's a good feeling. Haven't seen that bush track before. Wonder where that one goes. Out here, a good four-wheel drive is as important as having good fresh water. The two are needed for survival. Those paddy melons. These not really one of those bush tucker scenes. We'll just pull him off there. It's really part of that bush medicine scene, part of that bush medicine. I did hear a bit of a story in the old days I'd make a jam out of it, but I've never tried it and never seen it. But it's part of that bush medicine. I'll show you why. We'll just cut him in half, just like that, and I'll just show you what you do with it. There we go. There we go, if we can hang on to it. It's got all these black pips like the watermelons and so forth, and actually smells like a watermelon as well. It's got a sweet smell to it. But as a bush medicine, and I'll show them by the Aboriginal people, what they would do with it is just rub it onto their arm to an affected area of the skin. That sort of get the moisture out. It was mainly for treating sunburn, because Aboriginal people do get sunburn. It's not a bad thing. I've actually used it for sunburn. I've been sunburned twice in my life. Other than that, it's called camel melon, paddy melon, pig melon. It's good for target practice, setting up your rifle scopes, even throwing at your sister. Some of these bush tracks that I get myself onto are pretty difficult to follow along. You've got sharp rocks and tree roots and stuff that puncture tyres and stick into radiators. This little track's taking me out to a nice little campsite where I'm going to make camp for a couple of days. I guess by now you've probably gathered that I've spent a bit of time with Aboriginal people. probably some of the best years I've ever experienced. Certainly taught me a lot of tricks. One of those tricks was to throw a spear. Also had to straighten the spear, warm him up, grab some dirt so you don't burn yourself, and then just literally bend it down. Get the bend into it like that. And that spear, it'll hold the straightness. These are all part of the spearwood vine, or a spearwood mallee if you like. It's a really hard wood and a good shaft. Not so much a hard wood as in tough, but it sticks together, it holds together, it's got a little bit of springiness in it. So when you throw the spear and it hits something, it won't always snap. That'll do. The vine itself is sort of a little bit crooked, but I'm not too concerned about that. I'm just concerned about the whole shape of the spear, the shaft itself. Righto. Give that a try. Aboriginal people would spend days and days perfecting the art of throwing a spear. They'd use that woomera on the end to give that spear direction, like a catapult to send that spear further away. You can throw it further with that woomera than what you could do by just throwing it with your hand as a general spear throwing. It was important that Aboriginal people, the Aboriginal men, could throw a spear with good accuracy, because that's what the people depended on in the early days to survive. Oh, nearly got the cameraman. There he is, hiding behind that tree now. This skill was passed on from father to son, and today it's highly regarded to be able to throw a good spear. Bit hungry now. This is that damper that I made last night. Let's have a look at it. Cut him up for lunch. Oh, look at that. I've excelled myself. Truly excelled myself. Look at that. That with a bit of lettuce and some ham, gonna be beautiful. This is what I like, back on the road again, cruising through the bush. We're heading out to Meena Station. 20 years ago, it lived on the back of the sheep. It made money from the wool and the meat. Today, it's a deserted old station. This is the old shearing shed just here. I've done a few seasons in these sheds. Come inside, let me explain to you the operation of them. Have a look at this. This is an oldie but a goodie. This was actually the heart of the shearing shed, because this old lister, they'd fire it up and it'd be going all day. Boom, 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 all day. And it would then turn this generator, which would generate power to all the lights in the shearing shed. Up the back there was a pulley, and that pulley would run a big belt. There's the belt there. This fella here would be on that, running and turning a big pulley up there for all the shearing and their cutters to shear the sheep. Beautiful. One of my jobs as the rouseabout was to make sure that these pens were full of sheep at all times for the shearers. Once these pens are full, you'd have to come out here and clear this area to pick up the fleeces, because the shearers were here and they had this big arm coming down here with the shearers on the end of it. They'd pull this to turn it on, shear the sheep to get the fleece off the sheep. You were standing by, you were waiting for the fleece to fall onto the ground. You would then pick it up. There was a bit of an art to this fleece, because if you didn't pick it up properly, you couldn't lay it nice and flat onto the wool classes table. And believe you me, the first couple of days I'd have it on the other side of the table, I'd have it on top of the wool class, I'd have it everywhere. Then you were back on the broom, you'd pick up the broom again, keeping the whole place clean all the time, around the shearers, around the wool classer. And as soon as you'd finish classing, you'd put down the broom and you'd come in, you'd gather the fleece up again and you'd put it into whatever grade the fleece was going to go down there for the balers to do. Then the whole procedure started all over again. It was a hard day, trust me. And this grass, you can pick up all those little harpoon ends on the end of it. Make sure it gets a good grip on you. come up into the high hills, get up high, have a look at the country and see what they can see, because they were looking for river systems like that. The larger head and the shorter tail represents a female. Here they move through the country up to this area just up here, and there's a circle there, and that's the end of it, their journey, where they would have told the stories to that particular tribe of people up there.